While this is not the end of the war in Gaza, it's the beginning of the end.
Where did it all go so wrong? Honestly, it's a legitimate question. How did we get here?
Enough is enough. More than 36 years of slavery to a sick ideology. And the rest of the world has legitimized them as a resistant movement. And I've been saying since the beginning of the war, this is not resistance. Palestine is non-existential. The world needs to understand that Palestine was never a country. It has never been occupied. This lie must to come to an end.
Like how do you what set of actions result in the greater good in Israel? I mean, obviously you cannot have people who, if they want to stop everyone in Israel, you got to stop that. There's no way. Those people either need to be they killed or incarcerated, or they will simply try to kill more Israelis. This is what it amounts to, obviously. And they want to kill Americans too, by the way. Generally, like Israel is referred to as the little Satan in America. We are the big Satan. That's what the Ayatollah calls us. So, so I think, I think a lot of what's happening there is people are being taught to hate, in Gaza, and that's really the thing that needs to stop for there to be, long-term peace. Hopefully, is that you just cannot have the kids be taught to hate from the moment they can talk. That's fundamental. So, yeah.
To the people of Gaza, I have a simple message. This war can end tomorrow. It can end if Hamas lays down its arms and returns our hostages.
Followed by this.
And Israel will guarantee the safety of all those who return our hostages. But to those who would harm our hostages, I have another message. Israel will hunt you down and bring you to justice.
And after today, well, after this year, find me someone who doesn't believe him. You won't. World leaders, of course, reacted. Our Prime Minister said he was an enemy of the Israeli people and an enemy of peace-loving people everywhere. His death is a significant moment and can be a vital turning point in this devastating conflict.
We are going to have a problem in the Middle East. Today is not a day to celebrate. And I saw the presidential nominee, Kamala, saying regarding that this is over. It's not over. She's trying to win the votes, and we are trying to win the war. It's the responsibility of every free person in the world to put an end for this Islamic Republic that has been funding Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis by the American taxpayer money. It's insanity.
In the past year, American Special Operations and intelligence personnel have worked closely with their Israeli counterparts to locate and track Sinwar and other Hamas leaders. And I commend their work. And I will say, to any terrorist who kills Americans, threatens the American people, or threatens our troops or our interests, know this: we will always bring you to justice.
Now, I don't want to put a dampener on what is a very good news day for the world, but come on, we will always bring you to justice? Madam Vice President, you have done everything in your power to stop Israel from doing this. He was killed in Rafah. You told Prime Minister Netanyahu not to enter. In fact, you told the world.
We have been clear in multiple conversations and in every way that any major military operation in Rafah would be a huge mistake. Let me tell you something. I have studied the maps.
You weren't even present in Congress when Netanyahu spoke of how his country was fighting terror on behalf of all of us.
Who do you think takes over? Do you think that they'll replace him quickly as the new leader of Hamas?
Unfortunately, this usually is a whack-a-mole kind of situation. It's what we've lived with in the post-9/11 environment and several other areas. Unfortunately, they've worked very long and hard in recruitment training. I hope that the Israeli operations have degraded them somewhat, but hopefully they also learn that if you act in this way, justice will be served at some point, whether it's by Israel, the United States, or the free world generally. And eventually they have to take that lesson to heart. But really, we've got to go back to a different infrastructure in the Middle East. And I think that's hopefully what November 5th leads to.
Mm-hmm. What do you mean?
Well, the Abraham Accords was a very, very important infrastructure for the region. It had Israel and the Arab allies unified in maximum pressure on Iran. It had alternative paths to peace with engagement. But very importantly, it allowed Arabs to visit Israel and see for themselves what Israel was trying to do, to have humane policies, to see for themselves what was truthful and what was spin or lies from the terrorist and activist networks about the treatment that was going on there. That was, I think, a more durable framework. It was conspicuous that Vice President Harris only talked about the Iran deal being in or out. She never really acknowledged the Abraham Accords' existence, and yet that was the single most positive strategic contribution to the Middle East, I would argue, in my lifetime.
I said this from the beginning of the war. On October 7, they crossed all the red lines. What they did is unforgivable, is unforgettable. So it doesn't matter who's going to come in office. All of them are wanted. All of them are on the Mossad hits list. And let me take it even farther. Ayatollah is on the Mossad's hit list, and the rest of the Iranian guards. For the next weeks, for the next months, could be for the next years, we are going to witness the elimination of everybody who orchestrated, funded, planned October 7. We cannot afford legitimizing such savages.
No one ever had to make a choice between supporting Israel and supporting humanity. Standing up for innocent goes hand in hand with destroying the terrorists who are killing them.
Today is a good day. Today is a great day that we eliminated Sinwar. We have waited for so long, but this is not the end of the story.
Israel's UN ambassador says Israel's retaliatory attack on Iran will, quote, be very painful for the Iranian regimes, and they will think twice in the future whether to attack Israel or not. Israel's planned attack is reportedly ready, and U.S. officials expect it to come before the November election. What are you expecting there, Steve? I mean, Russia's deputy foreign minister warned Israel not even consider striking Iranian nuclear facilities. And Netanyahu has already said that Israel would not strike Tehran's nuclear or oil facilities and will instead target the military and infrastructure.
American B-2 stealth bombers conducted airstrikes on Houthi targets in Yemen. They attacked their underground weapons bunkers. General, was that a demonstration of what could be done to Iran's nuclear bunkers?
I think they probably drew that conclusion, for sure. They're very well aware that we have the capability to do that, but actually seeing it in live, so to speak, does make a difference. And by the way, this is the first major decisive attack that we've made against the Houthis. Most of all the other attacks have been against launch systems and the rest of it. And the CENTCOM commander, Stuart, so you and our audience know, he's recommended over 100 targets inside of Iran to take down based on the Houthis have been firing ballistic missiles at U.S. Navy warships. They haven't been shot at since World War II. And the fact there's been 300 attacks on U.S. bases in Syria and Iraq and no response to Iran. And that's what he has recommended. That has all been rejected. But nonetheless, this was a decisive attack. We don't know what the battle damage assessment is. We can assume it's likely pretty significant. But yes, you're absolutely right. Message to the Iranians, here is the capability that can take down your nuclear enterprise.
Extraordinary situation.
And if the Arabs who live in the region, if they drop their violence, if they drop their evil practice for political and financial gain, Once they come to realize that this strategy is a dead end, the moment they understand this, then they can coexist with Israel. And Israel has no problem coexisting with the rest of the Arab world.
Well, but you said it right there. I mean, we're not going to have a straight military solution to this, no matter how effective Mossad is. There's a financial component, there's a political component, and that's why it's continued the way it has. But I appreciate your perspective and the power behind it, as always. My friend Mossab Hassan Youssef, thank you.
But do you know what's been even worse? The soul-destroying reaction of all those around the world who purport to stand for life, freedom, democracy, and peace. This won't just go down in history as the worst massacre of Jewish people since the Holocaust, but as the darkest day for leaders all over the world who were tested and the vast majority of whom failed miserably. Those who stood tall despite their relentless campaigns to do otherwise will be remembered. Those who shrunk and sold their souls will be as well, for very different reasons.
In modern Jewish history, and it begins with 3 words: Dear Lord Rothschild.
Dear Lord Rothschild, I have much pleasure in conveying to you, on behalf of His Majesty's government, the following declaration of sympathy with Jewish Zionist aspirations, which has been submitted to and approved by the Cabinet.
Why was it that this letter was sent by the Foreign Secretary to your great-uncle Walter?
It's an interesting question because it was primarily a movement from Eastern Europe, but they didn't clarify who was in charge of that movement. And in addition, it was, after all, in Great Britain. So they felt that the Rothschild family should be the one to whom it was addressed. And Walter was Lord Rothschild, and he was a Zionist. And those really are the background reasons.
So Walter received the Balfour Declaration, and I have a copy here. And I wonder if I could possibly ask you to read it for us.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. I'm going to put on my spectacles to make sure I read it accurately. His Majesty's government view with favour the establishment of Palestine as a national home for the Jewish people, and will use their best endeavours to facilitate the achievement of this object, it being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine, or the rights and political status enjoyed by Jews in any other country. I should be grateful if you would bring this declaration to the knowledge of the Zionist Federation. Yours, Arthur Balfour.
And here it is, the Balfour Declaration. What do you feel when you see it here?
I genuinely feel it's one of the most extraordinary moments in the history of the Jewish people. If you think it took 3,000 years to get to this, and then you say, how did this miracle happen? It's the most incredible piece of opportunism. I mean, if you think you had an impoverished would-be scientist, Chaim Weizmann, who somehow gets to England, meets a few people, including members of my family, seduces them. He has such great charm and conviction. He gets to Balfour, and he unbelievably persuades Balfour and Lloyd George, the Prime Minister, and most of the ministers, that this idea of the national home for Jews should be allowed to take place. I mean, it's so unlikely. And then he's, starts to fight a difficult battle with the British cabinet, and this letter goes through 5 drafts, as you know. And in the end, it comes out as a rather compromising letter. I mean, the essential point is there for the Jewish community to fasten on to. You have the first bit, which promises a national home rather than the national home, and then you have the bit that nothing that's to be done should in any way harm the Arab community. But you come back to the big point, which is that this is perhaps the greatest event in Jewish life for thousands of years. And it's a miracle.